Scarlett Flynn had learned to run in silence. 2 years of living with Cole Weston had taught her many things: how to apply concealer to bruises, how to smile through split lips, how to make herself small and quiet and invisible. But the most important lesson was this: when you finally find the courage to run, you don't make a sound. The rain came down in sheets, soaking through her thin cardigan, plastering red hair to her pale cheeks. She'd left everything behind: her phone, her wallet, the diamond ring that had felt more like a shackle than a promise. She had nothing but the clothes on her back and the desperate animal need to escape. 3 blocks. 4. Her bare feet. She'd lost her heels somewhere in the garden, slapped against the wet pavement. Every shadow was Cole. Every car that passed made her flinch. He would find her. He always found her. "You think you can leave me, Scarlett? You think anyone else will ever want you?" His voice echoed in her skull, a poison she couldn't purge. 2 years of hearing it had almost made her believe it. Almost. But tonight, something had broken. When his hand had closed around her throat and she'd seen the emptiness in his eyes, the casual cruelty of a man who no longer bothered to hide what he was, she'd known. Stay, and she would die. Not tonight, maybe. Not next week. But eventually, he would squeeze the life out of her, one bruise at a time. So she ran. The street was dark. The businesses shuttered. The few pedestrians hunched against the rain and unwilling to meet her eyes. She spotted a black car idling at the curb. Long, sleek, expensive. The rear door hung slightly open, as if someone had just stepped out. A taxi, maybe, or a rideshare. It didn't matter. Anywhere was better than here. Scarlett dove inside and pulled the door shut behind her. "Drive," she gasped. "Please, just drive." The car didn't move. Slowly, Scarlett became aware of her surroundings: the leather seats, soft as butter. The faint scent of whiskey and something else. Sandalwood, maybe. The partition between her and the driver, dark and opaque. And the man sitting 3 feet away from her. He was watching her with eyes the color of a winter storm, pale gray, almost silver, framed by dark lashes and darker brows. His hair was black, swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved by someone who understood both beauty and violence. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, thin and white. His suit was charcoal, perfectly tailored, and his hands, large, scarred, resting on his thighs, were absolutely still. He didn't move, didn't speak, just studied her with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the leather. "I..." Scarlett's voice came out broken. "I'm sorry. I thought this was... I'll go..." She reached for the door handle. His voice stopped her. "Wait." It wasn't loud. It wasn't a shout. But something in the way he said it, low, commanding, laced with an authority that expected obedience, made her freeze. He leaned forward. The dim light from the street lamps caught his features, and Scarlett saw him catalog her. The wet hair, the ruined cardigan, the mascara running down her cheeks. His gaze traveled lower, to her arms, where her sleeves had ridden up, to the bruises, purple and yellow, layered like watercolors, fingerprints around her wrist, a darker band around her forearm where Cole had grabbed her 3 days ago. She tried to pull her sleeves down, to hide the evidence of her shame, but it was too late. He'd seen. Something changed in his face. The cool assessment vanished, replaced by something colder. Something ancient and dangerous, like the first crack of ice before a frozen lake gives way. "Who did this to you?" His voice was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that came before storms. "No one. I fell. I..." "Don't." The word was sharp as a blade. "Don't lie to me, not about this." Scarlett's breath caught. She should be afraid. She was alone in a stranger's car, a stranger who radiated danger the way other men radiated cologne. But the fear she felt wasn't of him. It was older than that, deeper. My fiancé. The word tasted like ash. Ex-fiancé, I left him tonight, I'm not going back. His name. Why do you... His name. She swallowed hard. Cole. Cole Weston. Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. Weston. He repeated the name like he was filing it away. Richard Weston's son. You know him. I know his father. I know what kind of men they are. His jaw tightened. I know what they do to things they consider their property. Scarlett flinched. That word, property, cut closer to the truth than she wanted to admit. Cole had never seen her as a person. She was a possession. A pretty thing to show off at parties and punish in private. I just need to get away. Her voice cracked. Please. I don't have any money, I don't have anywhere to go, but if you could just drop me at a shelter or a bus station or... No. She blinked. No? You're not going to a shelter. He reached into his jacket and Scarlett tensed, but he only pulled out a phone. He typed something quickly, then returned his gaze to her. You're coming with me. I don't even know who you are. My name is Declan O'Rourke. He said it simply, without emphasis, as if the name should mean something. It did. Scarlett felt the blood drain from her face. Everyone in this city knew that name. The O'Rourke family had run the Irish syndicate for 3 generations. Declan O'Rourke was rumored to have taken control at 22 after his predecessor, his own uncle, had been found floating in the harbor. The newspapers called him a businessman, the streets called him a king, and she had just stumbled into his car looking like a drowned rat and begged him to drive. I should go. She reached for the door again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to... Scarlett. Her name in his mouth stopped her cold. She hadn't told him her name. How did he... Cole Weston's fiancé, he said, answering her unspoken question. He talks about you at parties, shows photographs, brags about how he tamed you. The word made her stomach turn. I'm not going back to him. No. Declan's voice was firm, final. You're not. The car began to move. Scarlett watched the rain-slicked streets slide past the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. She should be terrified. She should be screaming, fighting, demanding to be let out. But when she looked at Declan O'Rourke, at the controlled fury in his eyes, at the way his hands had curled into fists when he'd seen her bruises, she felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Safe. It made no sense. He was a crime lord, a killer, a man whose name made powerful people flinch. But he looked at her bruises like they were a personal offense. He said her ex-fiancé's name like it was a death sentence waiting to be signed. Why are you helping me? She whispered. Declan didn't answer for a long moment. When he did, his voice was rough, raw. Because I had a mother once. His eyes stayed fixed on the window, on the darkness beyond. And I was too young to save her. Scarlett didn't ask what he meant. She didn't need to. The grief in his voice said everything. The car drove on through the rain, carrying her away from the life she'd known and toward something she couldn't name. Something that felt like danger and safety all at once. Something that felt like fate. The O'Rourke estate rose out of the darkness like something from another century. Scarlett pressed her face to the window as the car wound up a long gravel drive, past iron gates and towering oaks, toward a manor house that looked like it had been transported stone by stone from the Irish countryside. Ivy climbed the gray walls. Warm light glowed from a dozen windows. It was beautiful and imposing and utterly terrifying. This is your home? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. For now. Declan's tone was unreadable. There's a guest wing. You'll stay there tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss arrangements. Arrangements? Cole Weston won't stop looking for you. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his storm-gray eyes made her breath catch. His father has connections to the Moreno family, a rival organization. If they find out you're under my protection, it becomes a political matter. I don't want to cause you trouble. I can just disappear. Change my name. Move to another city. You wouldn't last a week. The words were blunt, almost harsh. Weston has resources, private investigators, friends in law enforcement. He'll find you, and when he does... His jaw tightened. I've seen what men like him do to women who try to leave. Scarlett's hand drifted unconsciously to her throat, to the fading bruises Cole's fingers had left there just hours ago. So what do you suggest? Stay here. Let me handle Weston. A pause. And in return, I'd ask something of you. Here it was. The catch. The price. Scarlett steeled herself, waiting for the demand she'd been dreading. Her body, her obedience, some new form of captivity dressed up in different clothes. My grandmother lives in the East Wing. Declan's voice softened in a way she hadn't expected. Maeve. She raised me after my mother died. She has dementia now. Advanced. Most days she doesn't recognize me, doesn't recognize anyone. Scarlett blinked. This wasn't what she'd expected. She used to play piano, he continued. Old Irish songs mostly. The doctors say music sometimes reaches people when nothing else can. But the nurses I've hired... He shook his head. They can play the notes. They can't play the soul. And you think I can? I think a woman who studied at the Brennan Conservatory for 3 years before she disappeared from public life might have the skill. His eyes held hers. I think a woman whose grandmother was Eileen Flynn, one of the finest traditional pianists in Boston, might know the songs my grandmother loves. Scarlett's heart stuttered. She hadn't touched a piano in 2 years. Cole had forbidden it, said it made her uppity, said she spent too much time on something that didn't matter. He'd sold her grandmother's piano a month after she moved in with him, and something inside her had died that day. How do you know about my grandmother? I know many things, Scarlett. A ghost of something, not quite a smile, crossed his face. It's my business to know. The car rolled to a stop in front of the manor. A man in a dark suit opened Scarlett's door, but Declan was there first, offering his hand to help her out. She took it without thinking. His palm was warm and rough, his grip steady, and felt a strange current pass between them. I'm not asking you to be a prisoner, he said quietly, still holding her hand. I'm asking you to play for an old woman who's lost in her own mind, to give her a few moments of peace. He paused. And in exchange, I'll give you something you haven't had in a very long time. What's that? Freedom. The word hung between them, glittering and impossible. Scarlett wanted to laugh. Freedom? From a mafia boss? But there was no mockery in his eyes. No calculation. Just a quiet sincerity that made her throat tight. 1 week, she heard herself say. I'll stay 1 week. Play for your grandmother, and then we reassess. Declan nodded. 1 week? He led her inside, through a foyer lined with oil paintings, up a sweeping staircase, down a hallway carpeted in deep burgundy. The guest room he showed her to was larger than Cole's entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed, a crackling fireplace, and French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. There are clothes in the wardrobe. Mrs. Brennan, our housekeeper, will bring you anything else you need. He paused in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space. Get some rest. Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to my grandmother. Declan. His name felt strange on her tongue. Why are you doing this? Really? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, His voice was rough. When I was 12 years old, I watched my father beat my mother to death. The words came out flat, stripped of emotion, but his eyes told a different story. She tried to leave him, tried to protect me. He killed her for it. Scarlett's hand flew to her mouth. I was too small to stop him then. Declan's gaze held hers, burning with something ancient and fierce. I'm not small anymore, and I will never, never stand by while a man destroys a woman who had the courage to run. He turned and walked away before she could respond. Scarlett stood in the doorway of her beautiful room, her heart pounding, her mind reeling. She'd fled one monster and landed in the arms of another, only this monster looked at her bruises like they were wounds on his own skin. This monster wanted to set her free. She didn't know what to make of Declan O'Rourke. But as she curled up in the softest bed she'd ever touched and listened to the rain against the windows, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't afraid anymore. The east wing of the O'Rourke Manor was quiet as a chapel. Scarlett followed Mrs. Brennan, a stout woman with kind eyes and silver hair pinned beneath a lace cap, down a corridor lined with family photographs. She caught glimpses of Declan in them. A dark-haired boy with solemn eyes, a teenager standing rigid beside a woman who must have been his mother, a young man in a black suit at what looked like a funeral. He doesn't smile in any of them, she murmured. Master Declan learned young that smiling was a luxury. Mrs. Brennan's voice was soft. But he has a good heart beneath all that armor. His grandmother saw to that. They stopped before a door at the end of the hall. Through it, Scarlett could hear the faint sound of a television, some old movie, by the sound of the orchestral score. She has good days and bad days, Mrs. Brennan said. Today's been somewhere in between. She might not respond to you at all. Don't take it personally. Scarlett nodded and stepped inside. The room was warm and bright, filled with afternoon sunlight and the scent of lavender. A hospital bed occupied one corner, but the rest of the space had been arranged like a sitting room. Comfortable chairs, bookshelves, framed photographs. And by the window, in a wheelchair draped with a crocheted blanket, sat Maeve O'Rourke. She was small and bird-boned, with white hair that floated around her face like dandelion fluff. Her eyes, the same storm gray as Declan's, stared out the window at something Scarlett couldn't see. Her hands, spotted with age, lay still in her lap. Mrs. O'Rourke? Scarlett approached slowly, the way you might approach a wild animal. My name is Scarlett. I'm a friend of your grandson's. No response. Not even a flicker. Scarlett looked around the room and spotted it in the corner. A piano. Old, beautiful, its dark wood gleaming with polish. She crossed to it and lifted the lid, running her fingers over the keys. They were cool and smooth, familiar as old friends. 2 years. 2 years since she'd played. Her hands trembled as she positioned them over the keyboard. You're not good enough to be a real pianist. Why waste time on something you'll never succeed at? Cole's voice, poisonous and familiar. She pushed it away. Her fingers found the keys and she began to play. The song was one her grandmother had taught her, an old Irish lullaby called Siochain na mai Deen, Peace of the Morning. The notes spilled out soft and slow, achingly tender, filling the room like sunlight through water. She was halfway through the first verse when she heard it. A voice, thin and wavering, but unmistakable. Maeve O'Rourke was singing. Scarlett's hands faltered, then steadied. She kept playing, her heart pounding as the old woman's voice grew stronger. The words were Gaelic. Scarlett didn't understand them, but the melody was perfect. Note for note, breath for breath, Maeve remembered. When the song ended, silence filled the room. Scarlett turned on the piano bench, hardly daring to breathe. Maeve was looking at her, really looking, with eyes that held a spark of something that hadn't been there before. Eileen? The old woman's voice cracked. Eileen, is that you? Scarlett's throat tightened. No, Mrs. O'Rourke, I'm Scarlett. Eileen was my grandmother. Eileen's granddaughter. A smile, tremulous, beautiful, crossed Maeve's weathered face. She had the gift too then, the music. She passed it on. She did. Play another. Maeve's hand lifted, reaching toward the piano. Please. It's been so long since I've heard the old songs. Scarlett played for an hour. She played every Irish tune her grandmother had taught her. Lullabies and love songs, drinking ballads and mournful airs. Maeve sang along when she knew the words and hummed when she didn't. Her frail voice weaving through the melodies like silver thread through cloth. By the time Scarlett finally lifted her hands from the keys, they were both crying. Thank you. Maeve's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you, child. I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten there was still beauty in the world. Scarlett crossed the room and knelt beside the old woman's chair. Maeve's hand found hers, papery and warm. You come back tomorrow, Maeve said. Promise me. I promise. She didn't see Declan in the doorway until she stood to leave. He was leaning against the frame, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were bright. She sang. He said quietly, She hasn't sung in 3 years. She remembered the songs. She remembered my grandmother. She remembered herself. He straightened, and something in his posture softened. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. Scarlett smiled, really smiled, for the first time in longer than she could remember. It was a gift. For both of us. Over the following weeks, Scarlett's 1-week trial stretched into 2, then 3. She played for Maeve every afternoon, and slowly, the old woman began to return. Not completely, not permanently, but in flashes of lucidity that felt like miracles. She told Scarlett stories about Declan as a boy, about his mother, about the old country she'd left behind 70 years ago. She asked about Scarlett's grandmother, about her music, about her dreams. And Scarlett began to heal. The bruises faded. The nightmares grew less frequent. She started eating full meals, sleeping through the night, walking through the gardens without flinching at every shadow. The manor that had seemed so intimidating on that first rainy night became something else entirely. A sanctuary, a home. And Declan was everywhere. She saw him at breakfast, reading reports with his coffee, his brow furrowed in concentration. She saw him in the library at night, nursing a whiskey, staring into the fire. She saw him with his grandmother, sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, speaking to her in soft Gaelic even when she couldn't understand. He was not what she had expected, not what the newspapers described. He was ruthless. Yes. She heard the phone calls, saw the hard men who came and went at all hours, understood that the empire he commanded was built on violence and blood. But he was also gentle, patient, kind in ways that seemed to surprise even himself. You're staring. Scarlett jumped. They were in the library. She'd been reading, or pretending to, and Declan was watching her from his chair by the fire with something that might have been amusement. Sorry, I was just... She shook her head. You're not what I thought you'd be. What did you think I'd be? A monster. The word slipped out before she could stop it. He didn't flinch. I am a monster, Scarlett. I've killed men. I've destroyed families. I've done things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. His voice was steady, matter of fact. But there are different kinds of monsters, and some of us choose what we're willing to devour. And what do you devour? His eyes held hers across the firelit room. Other monsters. The words sent a shiver down her spine, not from fear, but from something else. something that felt like recognition, like understanding. Cole called me today. Declan went still. What? On the house phone. I don't know how he got the number. Her hands were trembling. She clasped them in her lap. He said he knows where I am. He said if I don't come back to him by Friday, he'll... Her voice broke. He'll what? He'll make sure no one else ever wants me. She forced herself to meet Declan's eyes. He said he has friends in your organization, people who owe his father favors. He said he can reach me anywhere. Declan rose from his chair. The movement was slow, controlled, but Scarlett saw the fury beneath the surface, the barely leashed violence that lived in his bones. Did he threaten you? Yes. Did he say what he'd do? He was specific. She couldn't repeat the words, couldn't give them that power. Declan crossed the room and knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. His touch was gentle, so gentle, but his eyes were lethal. Listen to me. His voice was low, fierce. Cole Weston will never touch you again. I don't care who his father knows. I don't care what connections he has. Anyone in my organization who helps him is a dead man. And Cole himself? A muscle jumped in his jaw. Cole himself will learn what happens to men who threaten what's mine. Scarlett's breath caught. What's yours? He seemed to realize what he'd said. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe. Vulnerability. You're under my protection, he said quietly. That makes you mine to keep safe. But his eyes said something else. Something that made her heart race and her skin flush, and her whole body lean toward him like a flower toward the sun. Declan! A knock at the door shattered the moment. One of his men, a broad-shouldered Irishman named Finn, stepped inside, his face grave. Boss, we've got a problem. What is it? Weston's here, at the front gate. Finn's eyes flicked to Scarlett. He's got 6 men with him, and he's demanding to see his fiancée. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Declan rose to his feet, and the man who'd been kneeling before her, gentle, vulnerable, almost tender, vanished. In his place stood the crime lord, the king, the monster who devoured other monsters. Stay here, he said to Scarlett. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Declan, please. This ends tonight. He turned toward the door, then paused, looked back at her. When it's over, we're going to finish that conversation. Then he was gone, and Scarlett was alone with her fear and her hope, and the echo of a word that kept ringing in her ears. Mine. Scarlett lasted exactly 4 minutes before she left the library. She couldn't sit still, couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in, and somewhere beyond them, Declan was walking toward the man who had spent 2 years breaking her apart piece by piece. The man who had sworn to destroy her if she ever tried to leave. She moved through the manor like a ghost, following the sound of voices toward the front of the house. Mrs. Brennan tried to stop her. Miss, you shouldn't be out here. But Scarlett barely heard her. She had to see, had to know. The front hall was chaos. Declan's men lined the windows, weapons drawn, faces taut with readiness. Finn was barking orders into a radio, and at the center of it all stood Declan himself, his back straight, his hands loose at his sides, facing the massive front door like a soldier awaiting battle. I told you to stay in the library. His voice carried across the hall, though he didn't turn around. Of course he knew she was there. He seemed to know everything. I couldn't. She crossed to stand beside him. He's here because of me. I won't hide while you face him alone. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. She touched his arm, felt the tension coiled beneath the fabric of his suit jacket. It's been my fight for 2 years. I just finally have someone fighting with me. Declan looked down at her then, and something shifted in his storm-gray eyes. The hardness softened. His hand came up to cup her cheek. Just for a moment. Just a brush of warmth. Before the mask slid back into place. Stay behind me. It wasn't a request. The front door swung open. Cole Weston walked in like he owned the place. He was handsome. He'd always been handsome, with his golden hair and his perfect smile, and his eyes the color of a summer sky. Scarlett had fallen for that face once, had believed the promises that fell from those lips. Now, looking at him, she felt nothing but cold, clear hatred. There she is. Cole's smile widened as he spotted her behind Declan's shoulder. Hello, sweetheart. Did you really think you could hide from me? She's not hiding. Declan's voice was ice. She's under my protection. You'd do well to remember that. Your protection? Cole laughed, a bright, careless sound that made Scarlett's skin crawl. She belongs to me, O'Rourke. Has for 2 years. Whatever lies she's told you. I've seen the bruises. The words landed like a slap. Cole's smile flickered. She's clumsy, always has been. Falls downstairs, walks into doors. She has fingerprints around her throat. Declan took a step forward, and the temperature in the room dropped. She has scars on her back that she thinks I haven't seen. She flinches when men raise their voices, and she hasn't slept through the night since she arrived because she dreams about you. Cole's mask slipped, just for an instant, and beneath it, Scarlett saw the monster she knew. The cold, cruel thing that lived behind those summer sky eyes. She's my fiancé. His voice had lost its charm. She came to me willingly. Whatever happens between us is our business. Not anymore. You think you can keep her from me? Cole stepped closer, his men fanning out behind him. My father has connections, O'Rourke. The Moreno family owes him favors. One phone call, and this little sanctuary of yours becomes a war zone. Then make the call. Silence. Cole blinked. He hadn't expected that. The calm. The utter lack of fear. Scarlett felt a surge of fierce pride. This was what real strength looked like. Not fists and fury, but the unshakable certainty of a man who knew exactly who he was. You're bluffing, Cole said. I never bluff. Declan's voice was soft, almost gentle. Call the Morenos. Call whoever you want, and then watch what happens when you threaten someone under my protection. For a long moment, no one moved. The tension was a living thing, coiling through the room, waiting to strike. Then Cole's eyes shifted, past Declan, past Scarlett, to something behind them. Grab her! The attack came from inside. A man in an O'Rourke uniform, one of Declan's own men, lunged from the shadows and seized Scarlett around the waist. She screamed, struggling, but his grip was iron. Thought you might have a traitor or two, Cole said, smiling again. My father's been cultivating them for months. Insurance, you understand. Declan spun, but 2 more men were already on him, one grabbing his arm, another pressing a gun to his temple. Finn shouted, reaching for his weapon, but Cole's men had guns trained on every O'Rourke soldier in the room. Here's what's going to happen. Cole strolled towards Scarlett, his shoes clicking on the marble floor. I'm going to take back what's mine, and you, O'Rourke, are going to let me walk out of here, because if you don't... He pulled a knife from his belt, long and gleaming. I'll make sure they never find all the pieces. He stopped in front of Scarlett, lifting the blade to her cheek. The cold metal pressed against her skin. Did you really think you could leave me? His whisper was meant only for her. Did you really think anyone else would want you? 2 years of those words, 2 years of believing them, 2 years of shrinking, fading, disappearing into the shadow of his cruelty. No more. Yes, Scarlett said clearly. I did. And she drove her knee into his groin with every ounce of strength she possessed. Cole doubled over with a howl. The man holding Scarlet loosened his grip in surprise, just enough for her to twist free, to grab the knife that had fallen from Cole's hand, to put the cold marble of a pillar at her back. Everything happened at once. Declan moved like lightning, breaking free from his captors with a brutal efficiency that left one man unconscious and another screaming on the floor. Finn and the loyal O'Rourke men opened fire. Cole's soldiers scrambled for cover. The hall became a symphony of gunshots and shouting and the sharp scent of cordite. And through it all, Cole came for her. He was bleeding from somewhere. His lip, maybe, or his nose, and his beautiful face was twisted with rage. He lunged toward her, hands outstretched, and Scarlet raised the knife between them. You wouldn't. His voice dripped with contempt. You don't have the spine. You don't know anything about me. Her hand was steady. You never did. He reached for her anyway. The gunshot stopped him. Cole staggered, his hand flying to his shoulder, where a dark stain was spreading across his expensive shirt. He turned, disbelieving, and found Declan standing 3 feet away, smoke curling from the barrel of his gun. That was a warning. Declan's voice was deadly calm. The next one won't be. Cole's face contorted. You think this is over? My father will... Your father will disown you by morning. Declan stepped closer, and his voice dropped to something cold and intimate. Did you think I didn't know about his other secrets? The money laundering? The deals with the Morenos that violate their treaty with me? I have enough evidence to destroy him 10 times over. And I will, unless you disappear. You're lying. Try me. Declan's smile was a terrible thing. I'll make you a deal, Weston. Leave this city tonight. Never contact Scarlet again. Never speak her name. Never think her name. Never so much as breathe in her direction. Do that, and your father keeps his empire. Refuse. He cocked the gun. And I'll end your bloodline tonight. The silence stretched, brittle, and absolute. Cole looked at Scarlet, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Not of her. Of the man standing between them. Of the empire he'd underestimated. Of the monster who had chosen her to protect. This isn't over, he spat. Yes. Declan's voice was final. It is. Cole's remaining men dragged him toward the door. Finn and the others let them go, weapons trained on their backs until the last of them had vanished into the night. Then Declan turned to Scarlet. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, his hands finding her face, her shoulders, her arms, checking for injuries, his touch frantic despite his controlled expression. Are you hurt? Did he? I'm fine. She caught his hands in hers. Declan, I'm fine. When I saw him with that knife, his voice cracked. The mask shattered. When I thought I might lose you, you didn't. She stepped closer, pressing her forehead to his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her cheek. You saved me. You saved yourself. His arms wrapped around her, crushing her against him. That knee to the groin was magnificent. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her, wild, hysterical, relieved. She was shaking, she realized. They both were. I'm done being afraid, she whispered against his chest. I'm done letting him have power over me. Declan pulled back just enough to look at her. His storm-gray eyes were soft in a way she'd never seen. Open, vulnerable, utterly unguarded. You're the bravest woman I've ever met, he said quietly, and I am never letting you go. He kissed her then, fierce and tender and full of promise. Scarlet melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, her heart soaring. 2 years of darkness, and she'd finally found the light. It tasted like freedom. It tasted like home. 9 months later, Scarlet played at Carnegie Hall. It was a small recital, a benefit for survivors of domestic violence, organized by a foundation she'd helped establish with Declan's support. The audience was intimate, maybe 200 people, but to Scarlett, it might as well have been 2 million. Her fingers trembled as she took her seat at the grand piano, the spotlight warm on her skin. She thought about the girl she'd been a year ago, broken, bruised, so convinced of her own worthlessness that she'd almost forgotten how to breathe. She thought about the rainy night she'd stumbled into the wrong car and found the right life. She thought about Declan, sitting in the front row, his storm-gray eyes fixed on her with an expression of such fierce pride that it made her heart ache. And then she played. The music poured out of her like water from a broken dam. All the pain, all the healing, all the love she'd discovered in the most unlikely of places. She played her grandmother's songs and Maeve's songs and new compositions she'd written in the quiet hours of the morning, curled up on the piano bench in the O'Rourke Manor while the world slept. She played until her fingers ached and her eyes burned and the audience sat in stunned, reverent silence. When the last note faded, the applause was thunder. Scarlett rose and bowed, tears streaming down her face. She found Declan in the crowd, on his feet now, clapping harder than anyone, and smiled at him through the blur. I did it, she thought. I found my voice again. After the performance, they walked through Central Park in the moonlight. Spring had come early this year, and the trees were heavy with blossoms, their petals drifting down like pink snow. Scarlett's hand was tucked into Declan's, her head resting against his shoulder, her heart fuller than she'd ever imagined possible. You were extraordinary tonight, he said quietly. I was terrified. That's what made it extraordinary. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Scarlett. It's choosing to act despite it. That's what you did tonight. It's what you did the night you climbed into my car. It's what you do every single day. She looked up at him, this man who had killed for her, who had rebuilt her piece by shattered piece, who had shown her that love didn't have to hurt. The moonlight caught the silver in his eyes, and she felt, as she always did, that she could drown in them happily. I love you, she said. I don't think I say it enough. You say it every time you play for my grandmother, every time you smile at me across the breakfast table, every time you fall asleep in my arms. He cupped her face in his hands. You say it in 1,000 ways, Mo Crowe. I hear every one. Mo Crowe, my heart. The Gaelic endearment he'd started using 3 months ago, when the words I love you had first passed between them. It still made her breath catch every time. Declan, I have something for you. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Scarlett's heart stopped. When you fell into my car that night, he said, his voice rough, I thought you were just another lost soul. Another broken bird I could help and then release. But you... He shook his head slowly. You didn't just fall into my life, Scarlett. You crashed through every wall I'd ever built. You made me feel things I thought I'd buried with my mother. You brought music back to my grandmother's life and light back to mine. He sank to one knee. I've spent my whole life building an empire, he continued, opening the box. Inside lay a ring, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, glinting like captured starlight. But none of it means anything without someone to share it with. Without you. Scarlett couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare at the man kneeling before her, offering her everything. I can't promise you a normal life, Declan said. I can't promise you safety or simplicity or any of the things you deserve, but I can promise you this. I will love you every day for the rest of my life. I will protect you, fight for you, stand beside you through whatever storms may come. I will spend every moment proving that you are worthy of love, of joy, of everything beautiful in this world. His voice cracked on the last word. "Scarlett Flynn, will you marry me?" The tears came before she could stop them, hot and fast, blurring the moonlight, blurring his face, blurring everything except the love that blazed in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered. Then stronger. "Yes. 1,000 times. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and rose to his feet, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like forever. Cherry blossoms swirled around them like confetti, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed midnight. When they finally broke apart, Scarlett laughed, a wild, joyous sound that echoed through the empty park. "Your grandmother is going to be insufferable," she said. "She's been hinting about great-grandchildren for months. She'll have to wait a bit longer for those." Declan grinned, a real grin, rare and beautiful. "I want you two myself for a while first." They walked back to the car hand in hand, and Scarlett thought about the strange, winding path that had led her here. A rainy night, a desperate escape, a wrong turn that became the right direction. She had spent 2 years in darkness, believing she was worthless, believing she deserved the pain. She had been so lost, so broken, so convinced that the light would never find her. But it had. It had found her in the back of a black car, in the eyes of a dangerous man, in the music that had saved them both. It had found her in the courage to run, in the strength to stay, in the love that had grown from the ashes of her fear. She had stumbled into a monster's world and discovered that some monsters were worth loving, that some darkness held the seeds of light, that sometimes the most terrifying leap of faith led to the safest landing. Declan opened the car door for her, and Scarlett paused, looking up at the manor that had become her home. The windows glowed warm against the night. Somewhere inside, Maeve was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of old songs. Somewhere inside, a future waited, bright and uncertain and full of possibility. "Ready?" Declan asked. Scarlett smiled and took his hand. "I've been ready my whole life," she said. "I just didn't know it until I found you." She climbed into the car, this time on purpose, this time knowing exactly where she was going, and let the man she loved take her home. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video as your support is essential for me to continue creating content like this.